Hi guys, today we're going to talk about sage blood. So you can see here that I have a couple sage bloods that would be available on the market. This is actually something that you would buy at Halloween time. This was bought from Myers. Those are pretty ubiquitous in the Halloween stores at that time of year. And this, you can see, is a small bottle of Ben Nye's version of sage blood. And if you look really closely, you can see that it says mint flavored, so it is meant to be edible. You can buy blood recipes that are not edible and some that are. Of course, that depends on whether you're wanting to put it on your face, in the mouth, or if it's most primarily going onto clothing, costume, or onto the your arms and hands, things like that. It comes in a wide variety of sizes, and pretty much all stage makeup manufacturers sell their own version that you can purchase. But these can be costly and not as readily available if you need them in a pinch. So what I want to talk about today then are recipes that you can use that are made from things that you might already have in your house or that you could easily get at the grocery store or wherever. So the first recipe involves light corn syrup, Hershey's chocolate syrup, yum, this is going to be an edible, recipe, and red food coloring. This is all you need to make a simple blood. Simple at-home stage blood. You need some sort of container to mix it in and something to mix it with, which I'm going to use this wooden stick here. All right, so to begin, you're going to start with now this depends on how much blood you need to make. If you need to make a lot, you might be using a whole bottle. In my case, I'm gonna go with about a quarter of a cup, probably slightly under that, of Karo syrup here. Okay, adding that to my base. Depending on how thick or runny you end up wanting your blood to be, you could also add a little bit of water to this recipe. That would be just fine. So to my Karo syrup, I'm going to add to this amount of Karo syrup probably about a teaspoon, maybe just shy of a teaspoon of red food coloring. If you have those gel colors or something that's really concentrated, you might be able to add a little bit less. All right, so you can see. Then I'm going to mix in the red food dye into the Karo syrup. Now, this is red, right? And if I added more red food dye, then I could perhaps increase the darkness of the blood. And it's okay, but it comes out, which you might not be able to see great on the camera, kind of candy red, which isn't really what blood is like. Even fresh oxygenated blood, which is brighter than old blood or blood that doesn't have any oxygen in it, right? Those end up being darker. It just doesn't read very real. So to help give it a little boost of realness, that's where the Hershey syrup comes in. And in a small quantity of blood like this, you don't need a lot of Hershey syrup. I'm going to add about a half of a teaspoon of Hershey syrup to this. And then, again, I'm going to mix to blend. This just gives a little bit of opacity to the blood, and a little bit of darkness and richness, and honestly, flavor, because this is blood meant to be edible, put in your mouth into capsules or things like that. And so, putting that little bit of chocolate syrup, that's why the stage makeup versions that you can buy often are kind of minty flavored. They've added that to make the flavor better. Otherwise, it's just kind of a sweet corn syrupy taste. Right? So then there I have some blood, and you can see I can pour it out on here. It will run. All right. I can use my handy dandy syringe, which is great for filling up little blood pack things. These are little pill-sized gelatin capsules that you can fill with blood and then pop in your mouth. And they will either slowly dissolve, or you can crunch on them and get the blood to sort of pour out of your mouth. If you're using things like this, or putting the stuff in blood packs, you probably want it to be sort of less viscous than what we've created here. So that's where you would end up wanting to add some water. But you can also use this to sort of apply onto wounds and things like that. And you see, it moves and runs. If you wanted it a little darker, you could make it a little darker. If you wanted this to sort of thicken up and sort of coagulate some, you could actually add some cornstarch to it, which is another thing that maybe you have lying around your house, right? In the pantry, or that is very cheap and easy to get at the grocery store. Mix in a couple tablespoons of the teaspoons of the cornstarch, and it'll sort of thicken it up. If you really want coagulated blood, then you would use some clear gelatin and mix in the food dye and corn syrup into the clear gelatin. So this, easy, cheap, relatively tasty, stage blood. Now, if you'd like stage blood that doesn't need to be edible, you can put it on any sort of piece of clothing and things like that. I have another recipe. It starts largely the same. We're going to go with a little bit of corn syrup. Again, maybe scant quarter cup I'm going to start with. We want some red food dye. Good amount. Right? The more red food dye you add, the more it's going to end up wanting to stain things. So keep that in mind as you make your product. The idea here is that it can be washable out of the costume. So the next ingredient then that sort of will help us in that process of being able to wash it out of the costume is soap. Regular old green dish soap. Green helps because the green sort of little bit of green dye that's in the dish soap can add to the color a little bit. I find that they're pretty clear soaps. They don't actually add a whole lot in the way of like the green dye, but it's a little bit more effective than the blue dyed soap. But you could add that or just use clear soap. And of course you have to be careful as you mix. You don't want to get too sudsy if you mix too vigorously. Now this is still kind of candy red, so you could either mix in more chocolate syrup, or, which if you bought a case, a package of assorted food dyes, this would come with it and might be more readily available to you. Right, a little bit of green food dye. Not a lot. This is not very much blood, so I'm going to add one tiny drop of green food dye to this. And then mix it in. The green food dye then goes in there, mixes around with the red, and it sort of helps it become a little darker. All right. And it becomes a little bit more of that natural dark color that the Hershey syrup can give to it as well. But because this doesn't need to be tasty, there's kind of no reason in using the soap. But you wouldn't want, no use in using the chocolate syrup. But you wouldn't want to be putting this in your mouth. All right? And so, again, you can see, you can suck it up into a syringe, right? You can apply it to wounds, things like that. It's going to run, drip. It won't probably ever dry completely. If you wanted more of a dried blood effect on a cut or something like that, and you didn't have gelatin to make coagulated style blood, you could just paint in with red and things like that around your cut. All right, and that is 2 convenient, easy at home blood recipes that you can use.